Okay, good morning, everyone. We have a full house. Welcome to a work session and possible voting session of the Land Use, Transportation, and Public Safety Committee, subcommittee of the House delegation. We have a number of bills on our agenda today, and I would like to go through them in the following order. 2522, Delegate Fraser Hidalgo. 1122, Delegate Solomon. 10722, Senator Kramer. And 322, Delegate Moon. There's a lot on our plate and a lot to do, so I would appreciate everyone's full attention, and let's dive into it. First and foremost, Delegate Fraser Hidalgo. We had the bill hearing on this just Friday, so I don't know that there's much more that we need to talk about, but if there's anything you want to add, please, the floor is yours.
Oh, no, thank you. Just thank you to the committee for reviewing the bill. It's pretty simple. As you saw on Friday, the bill hearing was all of, I don't know, 47.5 seconds or something. So it's just the extension, and I'm here to answer any questions, and I know I have some folks that are here as well from the kind of ag and grain producers, just to answer any questions about how important this bill is. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great. Does anybody have any questions? No.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Delegate Wilkins, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, Madam Chair, I do have a question. I just wanted to know if the sponsor, good to see you, Delegate Fraser Hidalgo, could you please just remind us quickly, is it correct that there's no Sunday hunting currently except the specific designated days that it can be done? Can you just remind me really quickly around what we have currently in place for Sundays?
Sure. Initially, yes, there was no Sunday hunting. And what this bill did back in 2017 is it established Sunday hunting only on certain days and only until 10:30 in the morning. That's it. So all this bill does is extend that or remove the sunset of that original pilot bill. Does that answer your question?
Delegate Fraser Hidalgo, can I just jump in? There were, as Delegate Wilkins mentioned, the department could allow one Sunday, I think during deer hunting season, and the first Sunday, there were a couple of spots, I believe.
They would know better.
David, can I?
Please, yeah, please.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
So there was originally 3 Sundays, one during bow season, one during a youth hunting day, and one on the Sunday after the opening day of firearms season. What the bill established is adding another 18 Sundays that were limited to half hour before sunrise till 10:30 in the morning. So those were the Sundays that were added in the bill, and it's worked really well because we're harvesting about 8 to 9% of the deer harvest in Montgomery County happens on a Sunday, and without that, the farming community is barely keeping their head above the water when it comes to crop damage from wildlife. And this has been an opportunity for us to at least help somewhat by having the Sunday hunts. And we worked very hard with David to have a compromise with excuse me, my cat keeps jumping on me, to work with the equestrian industry to limit it till 10:30 in the morning so that they could ride in the afternoon and feel comfortable, not to worry about people hunting. So that's what the bill did in 2017, and what we're looking for is for the sunset clause to go away so the bill stays in place for forever.
Thanks, Bob.
Is that good, David?
That's great. That's better than I had. So thank you very much for clearing that up. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I see Jeremy laughing at me.
Any other questions?
I guess this Sarah Morningstar. I guess I just would add that this is all on private land. Is that?
That is correct, Sarah. Not public land. It's only on private land.
Delegate Crutchfield?
I think my question was answered. I just wanted to find out if there was notice given to residents, but if it's on private land, then I would assume you really don't need to give that much, but is there actually any notice of the dates given to neighbors, residents?
The Department of Natural Resources does not allow hunters to hunt on private land without written permission from the landowner. So the landowner and the hunter work together. So the law says you have to have a written permission slip to be on the property to hunt on private land through the DNR. So yes, there's a relationship between the hunter and you can't go on private land and hunt without the permission of the landowner. So it is the responsibility of the hunter, obviously, that has written permission to hunt on the private land to let the landowner know that they're going to be there on a Sunday. For instance, one farm, a 350-acre farm outside of Poolsville, the hunters actually post signs on the entrances to the trails on the farm stating when the firearm season is, to make sure that anybody that wants to walk through the woods knows when the firearm season is. So there's not people just, and it helps protect people from trespassing also.
Great. Any further questions by committee members? Any further discussion? Jim, are you raising your hand?
Yeah, I'll move the Sunday hunting bill, Madam Chair.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
Terrific. All those in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye. Any opposed?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
yes, I'd like to be recorded in the know.
In the know? Okay. Delegate Moon?
Yeah, I'm a no on this. Thank you.
Okay. So we are at, let's see, Rebecca, you have that vote count?
Yeah, I don't know if, Kelvin, do you want to just go through the list just to make sure?
Sure, we can do a roll call.
Let's roll call.
Delegate Acevedo,
No.
Delegate Crutchfield,
Yes.
Delegate Gilchrist,
Yes.
Delegate Moon,
No.
Delegate Wilkins,
Yes.
and Chair Love.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. The bill passes. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we will, bye, thank you.
Thank you.
Now we will move to PGMC 11122. Delegate Solomon. Do you want to give us a quick update or just refresher on what this bill is?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. Good morning, colleagues. This is a simple bill. It just removed the term limits for the county appointed representative to the board to make sure that the county executive had a little bit more flexibility. We had a situation where a member who served as an appointee from another entity hit their term limit, and the county executive wanted to, there was interest in potentially reappointing that person as the alternate member, but because they had reached their term limit as a full voting member, they could not be reappointed. There's obviously some oversight here. A county executive can't appoint a person without having it approved by the county council, so we figured that would cover any concern about ethical changes to it. There is an amendment that should be available from the chair that would essentially expand this to Prince George's County as well. The original bill just covered the Montgomery County representative, and so that amendment should just now apply that same concept to the Prince George's County representative as well.
So Delegate Solomon, if I understand correctly, that means that for the Washington Suburban Transit Commission, the 2 commissioners by Montgomery County, the 2 commissioners by Prince George's County wouldn't have term limits, but the 2 members appointed by the governor and the Secretary of Transportation would?
Correct. This bill solely addresses the county's representatives. The currently filed bill and the amendment applies what is in the bill to Montgomery County to Prince George's as well, at request of the Prince George's delegation.
Got it. Any questions by committee members? Any discussion?
The real barn burner, folks.
It is. Wow. Are we ready to move on this bill?
Madam Chair, I'll move the bill.
Delegate Wilkins, did you second? I couldn't hear.
Yes.
Thank you. Why don't we do
Madam
a
Chair,
roll call?
Do we have to move, do you have to move the amendment as well?
Right,
Or do we?
do. We do.
Okay.
I believe I said move the amendment.
Oh, Delegate Gilchrist, you are way ahead of me as always. Okay.
Madam Chair,
I'm sorry?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to make sure that before we move the amendment that there's some discussion on it. I just want to make sure I'm clear as to the amendment.
Sure.
If someone, perhaps the sponsor, can explain what that amendment is vis-a-vis the bill.
Yes, so the amendment again should just apply what is in, so the bill currently applies the removal of the term limit for the county representative for Montgomery County. The amendment would apply that same concept, removing the term limit for the county to Prince George's. Again, that was a request of the Prince George's delegation. Because this is a bi-county agency, this bill went in as both Prince George's and Montgomery. When we presented the bill to Prince George's, they said, we like this concept. We appreciate what you're trying to do to give our county council and county executive a little bit more flexibility in the pool of people that we can appoint. So would you be amenable to amending us, Prince George's, into this bill as well, which we agreed to. So that's what this amendment should do.
Delegate Solomon, doesn't it also make Prince George's County parallel to Montgomery County in that the county executive appoints 2 members as opposed to the governor appointing a member from Prince George's?
I believe so. I probably should have put the amendment up before.
Thanks for that clarifying question, Madam Chair. I was about to ask that, but if you can let us know.
Or Kelvin, you want to jump in?
It's my understanding that the current board is comprised of 7 members, the secretary, 2 members appointed by the governor, 2 members appointed by the Montgomery County Council, and 2 members appointed by the Prince George's County Council. And what the amendment would do is put the 2 members appointed by Prince George's County Council in the same stance as what the bill does for the members appointed by the Montgomery County, which is remove their term limits. So only the secretary and the remaining 2 members of the board that are appointed by the governor would be subject to those term limits.
Okay, so I misspoke. Okay, got it. Mr. Vice Chair, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks. So I think we had an amendment that Jim moved, but I'm fine.
Yes, that Delegate Gilchrist moved and Delegate Wilkins seconded. Why don't we do a voice vote? All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The amendment is adopted. On the bill as amended.
Move the bill.
Second.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. PGMC 11122 is passed as amended. Thank you all.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Very much. I love when we move through things like that.
Thank you all.
And now we come to a crashing halt. Senator Kramer. Good morning, sir.
Oh, good morning. Are you ready for me? I didn't know that.
Yes, we are ready for you.
Alrighty then. Well,
Ready for you.
good morning to the delegation. Ben Kramer here. And it appears as though the subject matter is PGMC 10722. And as the committee may recall, this is a bill that would require a particular land use document that upon application be signed under penalty of perjury. I just want to quickly, if I may, address something that occurred over just this past week, not even a full week ago. Every member of the delegation received a letter from the Park and Planning Commission. And in that letter, if I may, Madam Chair, the commission made the following statement. During the Montgomery County House delegation meeting held on December 15, 2021, Senator Kramer asked the MNC PPC to identify all of the, and here's the quote, land use documents that require a person to sign under penalty of perjury. Colleagues, at no time during that hearing did I request at any point that the Park and Planning Commission provide land use documents signed under penalty of perjury. And in fact, repeatedly emphasized that what I was seeking were all documents that are signed under penalty of perjury that are published by Park and Planning. And in fact, my exact quote was as follows to Park and Planning Council. Would you be good enough to share with the delegation other documents, other Park and Planning documents that are signed under penalty of perjury? The conversation then continued, and I asked the following question of council. Would you share with me all of the other documents that Park and Planning requires be signed under penalty of perjury? Finally, when council made reference to, well, under, those land use documents, and I corrected council and offered the following: not in the context of land use, any context, any whatsoever. Finally, colleagues, I received an email several days later from Assistant General Counsel, who's on this meeting as well today. And Assistant General Counsel was querying me about my request. And in writing to council on December 16th, I replied, my request of the MNC PPC was to provide me with all documents throughout the MNC PPC, which require the document be signed under penalty of perjury. Colleagues, I was unequivocal and unambiguous in my request of Park and Planning, both at the public hearing and in the follow-up email that I received from Park and Planning. You all received a disingenuous a letter misrepresenting my request of Park and Planning this past week, at the very end of last week. And I want to clarify that this is the problem that so many of our constituents have been having with the commission when requests are made of them and there is this effort to confuse and misrepresent. And I have a real problem. You all will be receiving the letter that I am writing in response to Park and Planning before this day is out. And I just wanted to go on record making it very clear that there was never any question over a month ago what my request of Park and Planning was. And then almost 6 weeks later, we get a response that does not address even remotely what that
Thank you,
request
Senator.
was.
Okay.
Now, in their letter, and yes,
If-
Madam Chair.
Thank you. I think what would be good is if at this point, we ask Adrian, perhaps, if there are comparable documents, equivalent documents, and if there are, if you can go back and look into the senator's full request, and then we'll have to take this bill up again at another date.
Well, and that's fine, Madam Chair, I would also just like to quickly address their summation and put it in context with the county council's response to this legislation as well, because they're completely contradictory. And I just want to highlight that. And if we can do that after Mr. Gardner's response to you, ma'am.
Yes, well, first of all, good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, it's Adrian Gardner, General Counsel of the Park and Planning Commission. The answer to your question is yes, we can, and in fact, have now gone back to collect a catalog of documents that we've now furnished to Senator Kramer, I believe. And I'll be happy to share that with the committee as well. I think what you will see is that they are different in kind than land use documents, which I think is part of the, the reason for the, I guess, misunderstanding. But in any event, the answer to your question, Madam Chair, is yes. We have at this point, I believe, done that.
Great, thank you, Adrian. And if we can all get that, so the committee will have a chance to review those things. I see a question by Delegate Wilkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to confirm with Mr. Gardner, because I do feel like we've been going back and forth on this for a number of years now at this point. Are there or are there not comparable documents that folks have to sign for parks or other comparable agencies that they have to sign under penalty of perjury? Do those already exist? Is this already an existing practice for documents?
Delegate Wilkins, we think the answer to your question is no, but I have to explain why. We think that the answer to your question on that score was in the letter that was received by our planning directors. What Senator Kramer is asking about is something entirely different. He's asking about, for example, when an employee signs up to work at the Park and Planning Commission, or a contractor signs up to work at the Park and Planning Commission, they have to certify with their taxpayer identification number. By federal law, they have to do that under the penalties of perjury. So we've identified roughly 15 or so of those kinds of documents that we think are not comparable. You use the word comparable, and I think that's the reason that we're responding, that we're having a difference in response. But the answer to your question, in my view, is honestly no. That was what our planning directors explained, but that doesn't answer the question, are there other documents that employees, vendors, beneficiaries have to sign subject to the penalties of perjury for various reasons?
Madam Chair. So there are documents, but you would not say that they're comparable.
In no way would I say that they are comparable. Correct.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Gardner.
Sure.
Any other questions by committee members? Delegate Crutchfield.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gardner, for being here. I want to just make sure I understand, and I'm just going to go back to the bill itself. As I look out of my window here and I look at a development next to me, and the promises that were made on the application when the subdivision was first, I guess, even, when it went through the very beginning of the stages of being built. And I think about all of those promises that were unfulfilled. And so what I want to understand is, in the application process, if the developer makes certain promises about, for example, roadways, forestry, landscaping, and those are made obviously for the good of all the communities, not just the particular subdivision that's being built, what kind of recourse do those neighbors have when those types of promises are not fulfilled? And that's kind of what I look at this as, an opportunity to provide neighbors with some kind of enforcement or some kind of teeth to it. So can you tell me kind of what happened in those situations?
Well, sure. It's a great question, Delegate Crutchfield, and ultimately the answer depends on exactly what kind of deviation you're talking about. If someone, for example, has a site plan approval or a forest conservation approval that has a series of conditions that are enforceable because they are part and parcel of what the development approval consists of, then those can be enforced. And there are different mechanisms to enforce them. The county can enforce them if they're a violation of the county code, for example. The Park and Planning Commission can enforce forest conservation violations. So if the promise is reduced to an element of the binding approval, then there is a great deal of enforcement, opportunities and differences that can handle it that way. I think the challenge with applications, and particularly because the concern that our planning directors have explained, is that looking at the numbers, they think that roughly 300 or so homeowners would be swept into this bill, and we're talking about whether or not they're promising that the gravel being used will be of a different grade, or, I mean, so many opportunities. And this is, again, going back to why I think that they're different. There's not a really very good excuse if someone doesn't understand the number of tax exemptions that they're supposed to have. And when they sign a sentence that says it's subject to the penalties of perjury. In an application, however, there may be very good reasons for mistakes. So that's why we think they're kind of different in kind. But the answer to your question, I think, is about enforcement mechanisms and whether it's actually become a part of the binding conditions for the approval that you're talking about.
But I also thought, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, may I have one more question? Thank you.
Go right ahead.
But I thought what this bill did was not so much, it seems like you're kind of extending it. And maybe I just don't understand totally what the bill does, but I thought it was for the application process, and that being that it doesn't necessarily bring in, like you said, all the different pieces to the puzzles, but if it's the developer who is applying for it, I would assume that they would have in place or have knowledge about certain things that they are promising. And I guess that's what I'm going to. I mean, I'm not trying to bring in, as you mentioned, this flow of hundreds of people, but I'm just trying to understand and make sure that it's clear to myself that we're really just horning in on what they know about that property and it being subdivided in some kind of manner.
It's a very important point, because the bill really does have a one size fits all. And so you might have that concern with a developer or an engineer who's filing an application. You say, that developer or engineer might actually be, held to a higher standard, perhaps. I think the issue with this is, though, that you're also going to be sweeping into it the smaller mom and pop contractors, and you're also going to be sweeping in the homeowners that deign to try to do it themselves. And that is what our planning director has said is part of the concern. The scope of the bill covers both, and that's a fair concern, Delegate Crutchfield. It's a fair concern.
Anything further, Delegate Crutchfield? Any other questions from members? So then it seems to me that we're still waiting on a little bit more information, and that this committee probably need to do a little bit more work on this.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Senator, of course.
I'd like to call out Mr. Gardner on his comment and offer the committee the following. Mr. Gardner just stated that this is a one size fits all, and I believe misrepresents that mom and pop contractors and small homeowners are going to get caught up in this. I challenge Mr. Gardner to come back with an amendment that would clarify that this would be applicable to any project over a size, and let's just say maybe $20,000, $30,000, or some other measurement that Mr. Gardner, with his 20 years of familiarity and expertise as counsel for park and planning, comes back to this committee with to distinguish that it would not be somehow sweeping up little innocent mom and pop people who, by the way, in the letter from the commission to you, they're implying that people are going to be going to jail because they identified a 24-inch willow tree mistakenly when it was actually a 24-inch willow oak tree. And that will be basis under this law for them to be going to jail. And I think that that is clearly, it would mean we all have to suspend logic and common sense. But I am now going to challenge Mr. Gardner, if you would, Madam Chair, to come back to this committee with the distinction, so that, because the intention of this and my concern with park and planning is that I think they are doing the bidding of the big developers who oppose this. We didn't have any small people coming in opposing it. The big developers did.
Okay,
So if they're
if I may-
concerned about the small people, Mr. Gardner, come back to this committee with an amendment, making it clear they're not going to be held liable.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Mr. Gardner, Adrian, how about we have a conversation? We've got to move on because we have a lot of folks here for 322. But perhaps we can have a conversation about whether that is possible. And I'm going to put it as a request. Okay?
Very well, Madam Chair. I will actually forward the email that was sent earlier over the weekend, and I will address that in writing as well. But thank you so much for your kindness today.
Great. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Adrian. And with that, I know Delegate Moon has a lot of folks on the line because 322. Thank you, Delegate Moon, for all your work on this. It's a really important issue, and the more I look into this, the more concerned I get. That said, I know that the bill itself needs some work. So Delegate Moon, I'm going to turn it over to you. Where would you like to go with this right now?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Why don't I just, I guess, explain where I would like to go with amendments. And, you know, I have some updates also for the committee just in talking to some of the stakeholders. So I can just dump out some of that information and then we can maybe go from there. So as you'll recall, the bill as introduced, really philosophically, it was trying to do two things. One, to use photo enforcement data to identify dangerous areas and locations for pedestrians. And then two, to actually direct the photo enforcement revenue to actually do something to make those locations safer. And the bill tried to reform two specific aspects of photo enforcement in Montgomery County. One was for speed cameras, where under our new law, drivers might see low speed limit roads. You'll recall we passed a bill last session to have lower speed limits on some roads in Montgomery County. The second aspect was in how we operate our school bus camera program. So let me just quickly address the photo enforcement of speed issue. Baltimore City and Anne Arundel counties had recent laws passed to their speed camera enforcement programs. And the language essentially said, we're going to use that money on the road where the enforcement revenue is generated. And so in the bill as introduced, it includes some of that language so that we would do the same in Montgomery County. If anyone wants to see the language from the other jurisdictions that did this, I'm happy to share that language and answer any questions, I guess, about that aspect. Now, on the school bus one, this is where I think I've had a lot of thinking to do. And here's the underlying question, issue, concern. I sent everybody a spreadsheet by email that contains a list of the top school bus camera offense locations over time. And what you will see in it is that the numbers are going up in these high offense locations every year. In other words, if we do nothing, we are exposing children at these school bus stops to an ever-growing number of drivers who are blowing past and not obeying the law. Now, the bill as introduced was trying to remedy this by using the funds to build a median, because the state law indicates a median is safer and tickets are therefore not issued there. Now, I understand, and folks at the bill hearing raised the issues with having, as we've now heard about, a one-size-fits-all solution for the intricacies of these various photo enforcement locations. So here's where I'm at. I talked to State Highway over the last couple days, and many of us in D20 and probably beyond have gone on safety walks with State Highway and in D20 on these very roads, in fact, and they flagged down numerous pedestrian safety issues that they have told us year over year they don't have the money for, even though they acknowledge and admit that there are missing beacons, crosswalks, sidewalks, stripings, stop signs, full lights. We had one right around the corner from me canceled due to pandemic cuts. And so I would propose to do two things with this bill on the school bus side. One, to require data reporting. So I sent you that spreadsheet with the year over year statistics. I asked for that 3 or 4 years ago, and I'm just now seeing these numbers now because a bill has been introduced. And we are currently awaiting release of data showing the lane direction statistics for each of these stops. What I shared with you only shows the number of violations per location. But again, I asked for those breakdowns for some of the high offense locations in District 20, and what they revealed was striking. The number one location in the county, 8800 block of Colesville, downtown Silver Spring, right in the heart of downtown Silver Spring, adjacent to residential towers and businesses. And it's generating almost $1 million a year now in offense revenue. But when we looked at the lane direction statistics, and again, I can share with you, at least for those locations, they indicate 90% of the drivers who are receiving these tickets are in the opposite lanes of that 7 or 8 lane state highway, and that they're not the folks behind the cars. And so, you know, in the early conversations we've had, people have tried to suggest there's nothing wrong with these roads and that the roads aren't the problem. But again, you know, having now reconfirmed this with State Highway in recent days, they are going to try and help generate language that would allow us to place this money somewhere where it might actually be used to make these stops safer. So that is the 2-part amendment I would like to have drafted, and it's going to take some discussion about how to do it. But again, in short, it's a data reporting so that everybody's aware of this data, and the Vision Zero people and traffic engineers and school bus, the people who pick the school buses, can actually make decisions based on data. So I think that's a fairly simple amendment. Now, the second one, it's about taking the money and actually using it to make things safer. Again, with now the data indicating that if we do nothing, we are likely to see increasing numbers of people blowing back past these kids. And at some stops, $1 million of fine revenue going nowhere to actually make that stop safer. So on that second point, I assume there's going to be some conversation because these are state roads, but county programs and county school system. And I think the revenue right now is flowing through the schools back to the county police. But that's basically what I'd like to do. And so I would put all that out for discussion, and sort of whether there's sort of a straw poll sentiment that it would be worthwhile to pursue these amendments.
Questions, comments, thoughts from the committee members?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just to Delegate Moon, thank you so much for your work between our work sessions to identify another potential solution for this bill. I just wanted to make sure that I have what your current idea is. The bill, what you're proposing to change the bill to is data reporting and also utilizing the funds from the cameras to go towards actually improving and making our roads more safe for students. That's where we are.
That is correct. And it would be both for the school bus camera tickets, specifically for the school bus high offense locations, and for the speed cameras for the places generating where people are speeding. And again, that would be consistent with what we're doing in other counties in recent years with how we direct photo enforcement revenue. And if you're a member of the Transit Caucus, I would also point out, I just voted to endorse 2 bills this morning. One of them was a bill by Delegate Robin Lewis that would seek to take the Baltimore City's photo enforcement revenue and direct it to the Safe Streets, Vision Zero, and school bus walk to school safety programs there. Again, in Baltimore, that money is not going anywhere. It's not guaranteed to help make the offense location safer. The second bill that I voted to endorse this morning in the Transit Caucus was a bill from Delegate Julie Polakovich-Carr that would again take pedestrian fatality and other incident data and require an analysis of what sort of road engineering and design changes would make those safer. So again, in the modern era in 2022, I think it's an entirely reasonable proposition that we use the data to guide decisions and that we use the funding to remedy some of those offense locations. So that's in short, you got it exactly right.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions, comments, discussion from committee members?
So Madam Chair, I'm not sure what the proper format is here for this, but I know there are some stakeholder.
That's exactly where I was going. Yep.
I'm sure some of them might have thoughts on this, but I don't know what the appropriate way is if we're asking them to weigh in.
That's, you read my mind. I was giving the committee members an opportunity, and then I was going to open it up for, first of all, thank you all for joining us. And then if those of you who are here have some comments you want to make, things you think the committee should know as we're working on this bill, you are welcome to jump in.
Chair Love of Sarah Morningstar, Office of Intergovernmental Relations. What I'd like to do is, after Delegate Moon had introduced his bill, we then the county then put together a group of stakeholders, and it included MCDOT and the police, Vision Zero, and MCPS. So those are the folks who are here. Wade Holland, who leads the county's Vision Zero program, has comments prepared where certainly can discuss the issues that we identified that we would appreciate being able to be considered by this committee.
Sure, go ahead, Wade.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, and to Delegate Moon for helping us work through this, meeting with us on this topic, and looking through the amendments. In terms of the data reporting, I think that's perfectly fine. One thing that we'd like to make sure that we work on is if there's any sort of explicit requirements for the data reporting, that it's something that we can currently collect or could possibly collect through the vendor. We do have a lot of data already available for this program, so we would be able to generate a lot of different reports, different things, but want to make sure that it's something that we either currently collect or could collect in the future. In terms of the camera site, the camera revenues, one of the things that's happening now with the school bus cameras, and I can turn over to police to answer this in more detail. But right now, the camera revenue is going to help pay for the installation of the cameras. So to give you an idea of the camera fleet, when this program first started back in 2016-2017 school year, we started with about 80 buses. In 2016, they had cameras. Now we have the full fleet up to 1,400 buses with cameras. So as those were installed over the last couple of years, that installation is paid for. And I can turn it over to police to kind of clarify about how the current revenue stream works and potentially any things they want to point out about how that revenue could potentially be used.
Thank you, Wade. Good morning, Madam Chair and everyone else. Lieutenant George Stinsky, Montgomery County Police. And I have Chris Tipper and Dan McNichol with me from our traffic division here to discuss this. Basically, the income that comes in from the school bus revenue is we process it as the police department, but it's a 60-40 split between MCPS and the police. And for the police side of it, we just are the gatekeeper. We bring the money in, separate it out by the percentage, and then it goes to the county general fund. We don't have a say in that money once it's out of here. And my understanding is it is supposed to be earmarked for public safety, but I don't know to what extent. I have asked for a breakdown of what comes back, and I was told that's pretty much impossible, at least at this point.
Okay, thank you, Lieutenant. Anyone else want to jump in?
This is Danielle Suskin. I'm the Coordinator of Legislative Affairs for Montgomery County Public Schools.
Danielle, I can barely hear you.
Oh, no.
I know we had this problem before.
Can you hear me now? No change. Okay.
No change.
We are working with the team and we support.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments by anyone? Questions, discussion, thought?
Chair Love, Chris Conklin from Montgomery County DOT. I appreciate the sentiments that Delegate Moon has outlined here and potential different tact on this bill. And I think it's important that any improvements and funds for improvements be directed to the owner of the facility, the authority having jurisdiction on the road. So that would include municipalities, state DOT, or the county DOT as applicable by the findings found in the reporting.
Okay. Delegate Moon, huge kudos for all of your hard work on this. I really appreciate everything that you've done and everyone else here coming together and working together on this. Vice Chair Acevero, did I see you had a question?
I don't know.
Nope. Okay. So Delegate Moon, shall we leave it that you are working on these amendments with this work group, and that you will come back to us when they're ready?
Yeah, that's right. I just wanted to get a gut check that no one was going to jump up and down about either the data or the redirecting the funds towards the problem spots.
I may jump up and down, but in favor of.
And I appreciate Mr. Conklin's reminder on that. And that's part of the challenge, has been trying to figure out where to actually put this money and all of that so that it gets spent in the right way. And I think part of what's useful and it didn't get reflected in this discussion is that the county's now convening discussions among the various agencies and stakeholders here, so that I think it'll be easier going forward to do this kind of thinking. So thank you everybody for bearing through all of the nerdiness on this.
No, it's really important. Wade, you had another comment?
Yes, thank you. Just one last thing on the revenue piece, that we can work through this, and answer any questions and be available to answer that. Obviously we would like to potentially go to existing funding and existing fund sources, because one of the potential issues, if we get too narrow about how the money can be used, basically kind of ends up in a pot of money and there's not enough to potentially use it in a timely fashion because it's kind of so locked into a certain way. So we're very happy to work through any questions on that, where it potentially could be used for this purpose.
Great. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay. I love this committee. We are so timely. That's wonderful. All right. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate that. With that, the business portion of this meeting will conclude unless there is anything else for the good of the order business-wise. As soon as we go offline, I'm going to talk to you all about scheduling. But is there anything else business-wise for the good of the order that committee members would like to bring up? No? Okay, great. Then the business portion of this meeting is adjourned. Rebecca, we can go offline. Members, if you can give me just 5 minutes so we can